My Little Pony and Analytic Epistemology on being an analyst and what you should watch out for as a viewer. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy dealing with nature and scope of knowledge, focusing on its limitations. I'd like to explore the effect that it has on the analytic community, and why it matters in viewing problems and scenarios presented in both the canon story and in subsequent work. I'll be dividing this discussion up into a few core concepts, so bear with me as I go on through. Due to the nature of MLP being a broadcasted program, we only have so much material from which to draw our conclusions from. So our resulting hypotheses about the show, its lore, and storyline may not entirely be accurate simply because of the limited material we have to work with. In spite of this, however, I believe that we can reasonably assume some facts to be true to the franchise because of implicit and contextual information. What I am referring to is the fact that since My Little Pony is a show by Hasbro to market to an American populace, we can interpret their terminology to fit into an average American's identification of the word. For example, the word princess may mean one of many things in our world of literary critics and analytics, but to the layman, the word princess only means so much. Therefore, we can only explicitly interpret the word princess as what the layman would, and that may only be a youthful woman in the established monarchy that may rule in the absence of a king or queen. This is one type of epistemology, and ties into the first area of discussion that I am going to explore: ambiguity. Ambiguity of information is aptly defined by Wikipedia as information that has the ability to express or contrive more than one interpretation. It is different from vagueness in that we can use its context to resolve whatever ambiguity may occur to us, although whether or not this is the true intent of the author is removed, and may remain obscure. There is semantic ambiguity in the show My Little Pony, mainly over the question of cutie marks and destiny. I'll be trying to delve into this matter further as we go on. Now, when exploring semantic ambiguity, we must first look at what semantics are. When somebody says, "but then it's purely a semantic argument," they mean to say that, at that point in the conversation, both parties are simply arguing over the meaning of words. Why do these semantic arguments occur then? Because even in the same context, the same word may mean different things to different people. This is where the word destiny falls into literary scrutiny. Destiny is a word that, bar explicit definition, may have a myriad of interpretations even among the target audience of average American, and even in the minds of children aged 6 to 12. If destiny is referenced as a word in literary analysis, it must first be very clearly and explicitly defined. Such is not the case with some analyses videos that have cropped up recently, and this is to be expected. Not a lot of people put thought into their diction and word choice on mediums such as YouTube. As a side note, this type of literary criticism is commonly found in politics, where the opponents may nitpick about word choices and try to sabotage the platforms of each other. People may say that the subtle differences in syntax and diction may not matter, but in reality, it matters a great deal, influencing a great many people's perceptions of the subject matter. Anyway, with destiny, I believe that the average child aged 6 to 12 have a very muddled perception of the concept. Destiny is a very abstract concept, and children of that age typically have a hard time conceptualizing destiny, as not only is it an abstract concept, it, as a concept, requires an understanding of the future and the path that would be taken were it not for destiny. These concepts are beyond what the average 6 to 12-year-old are expected to know, and as such cannot be used in this context to define the term. What then would I define destiny as? Well, as a child, I remember my definition of destiny very clearly. It wasn't a predetermined path or a set destination. It was simply what I was going to be when I grew up. It was very ambiguous and subject to change. I realized that the idea of a changing destiny may be oxymoronic, but as a child growing up, that is what I believed. I realize I may be wrong, as my sample size is just me, but try asking your younger brothers or sisters if they feel as I did. With this, the ambiguity of the term may be considered to be largely dissolved. The word destiny cannot be defined by the explicit context of show, but when you keep the target audience in mind and remember, the implicit context makes for a reasonable and acceptable answer. However, there is a problem with this, which leads me to my next topic, the literary difference in semantics and syntax. I realize that these are terms not everyone is familiar with, so I will again define them here in relation to each other. Semantics are the study of meanings, specifically words in this instance. Syntax is the grammatical order in which words are put in order to make logical sense. Given this working definition of syntax and semantics, we are now ready to apply them to the show. I have already explored the concept of ambiguity in semantics, but what about syntax? Well, if I were to apply the same concepts to storytelling, I would probably compare the concepts formerly discussed to the difference between a good story and a correct story. Much like how a sentence could have perfect syntax, but may lack any logical sense due to semantics, an example being a sentence like, "Colorless green ideas sleep furiously." A story may have an opening, climbing action, climax, falling action, and conclusion, all whilst being complete non sequitur. The problem in syntax is best expressed in My Little Pony's episodes. Although each episode has its own story arc, the entire season's format is episodic central, meaning that overarching story ideas and continuity are called into question. However, because of the medium of TV and the culturally accepted format, this perceived fault is completely acceptable. I don't mean to say that each season is bad, but it makes little sense if you consider syntax. A more glaring problem, however, is when analysts refer to the concepts explored in each episode in relation to one another. Normally, this would be fine. However, since episodes of MLP are episode-centric, the fact of the matter is that although they are based in the same universe, the same timeline, and the same setting, the semantics used in each episode are fundamentally contextually different than the same terms used in other episodes. This leads to the next point, inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is something that is not widely taught in most schools. The school system instead prefers deductive reasoning, since the conclusions of deductive reasoning are not associated with probable but not definite solutions. After reading the Wikipedia article on the topic, I've decided that the passage there about the subject is very concise, and I will repeat it here. The premises of an inductive logical argument indicate some degree of support, inductive probability, for the conclusion, but do not entail it. That is, they suggest truth, but do not ensure it. In this manner, there is the possibility of moving from generalizations to individual instances. Inductive reasoning consists of inferring general principles or rules from specific facts. In many cases, this is what analysts do, with headcanons going from Celestia and Luna, all the way to the way cutie marks work. Analysts apply this type of reasoning to contrive points and arguments stemming from the source material. As a short example of this, I will briefly analyze the existence of pony magic here. Earth ponies, Pegasus, and unicorns are physically similar in size, stature, and temperament. They are shown to be able to breed with one another and have fertile offspring. They are also magical in that Earth ponies can communicate on a deeper level with nature. Unicorns harness magic as an energy source, and Pegasus used magic to enable flight, the ability to walk on clouds, and to manipulate the weather. Unicorns are shown to be able to ascend to an alicorn state. Pegasus and Earth ponies then, by argument of analogy, might also be able to ascend to an alicorn state. Later, it is revealed that Pegasus are in fact able to ascend. It follows then, by analogous induction, that Earth ponies are probably able to do it as well, since they are all of the same genus, and are able to use magic along with other similarities. However well we may induce points and generalizations, we may be far from accurate, since inductive reasoning, above all else, is plagued by the limitations of knowledge explored in epistemology. Although inductive reasoning is probabilistic, obviously, the accuracy of the generalization will grow with more samples and episodes. However, sadly, we aren't graced with much canon material other than what Hasbro provides. If some of you have seen my last video, I go into detail about how it is important for analysts to know what they are saying, since it may affect the perceptions and mindsets of a great amount of people. It is especially important, then, that the viewer knows that however likely our stories may seem, or however well they fit together, it is well within the realm of possibility for us to have it all wrong. I would like to point out that this idea would promote individual concept growth. as in new ideas stemming from the community, and while I believe that this is a good thing, I will go on to say that even if we seem sure of ourselves, in the end, our interpretations are largely probabilistic. With that, I'd like to go into the last two topics I will discuss in this video, as time is probably running long already. These are the concepts of belief revision and coherentism. Belief revision is where, upon arrival of new information, old information is either updated or revised. There is a difference in which update means that new information is still true, while a revision means that old information is shown to be false, and a new idea takes hold. This is something that naturally occurs within everyone at the subconscious level. The trouble with this concept is that if we look at an episode with a lens, we are biased one way or another, and cannot make an objective conclusion. This is why all analytic work is subjective. Because we have our biases, we are able to make extrapolations from the source material, and be able to tie things together in a neat bow. However, when the show shatters whatever headcanons we have, we are subject to the next concept, coherentism. Coherentism is a complicated topic that can be broken down into two parts, the coherence of truth and the coherence of justification. In analysis, we use two types of informational sets. Truth, the ideas that have been established as true by either canon or implication, and justification, statements that are resultant from those truths. We use these arguments to create new data, but there is a problem here. As analysts, we must realize this and not fall back on arguments that have circular logic. What I mean by this is the regress argument. Given a statement S, it is justified by statement S, which is in turn justified by S. This argument does not logically make sense, even though some ideas considered self-evident follow this model. Exempli gratia, I think, therefore I am. However meaningful this statement may be, the argument it is based off from is entirely nonsensical and cannot be rationally used to base new ideas off from. Thus, when we explore concepts pertaining to the show, we must be sure not to cite sources that hold true to the regress argument standard. As viewers, I urge for you to see that some arguments do hold to this model, and to use your own judgment when deciding or not to hold headcanon or analysis to heart.